Ousted President here on France 24. We start in Egypt. Former President Mohammed Morsi has been sentenced to 20 years in prison without parole. That's over the alleged killing of, inciting the killing of protesters back in December 2012. For more, we can cross to Sharif Abdelkoussous in Cairo. Good morning to you. This verdict just coming in on state television. What more can you tell us?
That's right. This is the first verdict against the deposed President Mohammed Morsi. He received, as you mentioned, 20 years in prison, along with several other defendants also charged in the case, many of them senior Muslim Brotherhood leaders. They were charged with incitement of killing of protesters, possessing weapons, acts of thuggery, and one of the charges, the killing of protesters, carried the death penalty. Most of the defendants were acquitted of that charge, but they were convicted for inciting violence and received 20-year sentences. They, of course, can appeal these sentences, and we've seen a number of harsh rulings overturned on appeal. We'll have to see how that goes. As we mentioned before, this is the first verdict against Mohammed Morsi. He's currently a defendant in at least two other serious trials. One where he's accused of spying, accused of leaking documents to the Qatari government, and the second for escaping prison during the 2011 uprising in January. So he still has two other trials ahead of him. This trial was held behind closed doors, but today's was broadcast on live television. It was a brief session with the judge coming out and issuing the verdict. You could see the defendants, not Mohammed Morsi himself, but the other senior Muslim Brotherhood members inside the cage dock. They were smiling after the verdict, holding up the four-fingered salute, which is the sign for Rab'a, the symbol of their sit-in following Morsi's dispersal, which was held for 6 weeks before it was brutally dispersed by the security forces. So the Muslim Brotherhood yesterday, its office in London, called for demonstrations across the capital and across Egypt in response to the expected verdict. We haven't seen any reports of protests just yet, but we'll have to see how this plays out.
You were talking a little while ago there about harsh sentences. Obviously, the context to all this is this ongoing crackdown by Egypt's government on the Muslim Brotherhood.
Absolutely. The Brotherhood has been the primary victim of a very harsh state clampdown by the security services and by the judiciary, which has sentenced not just the Muslim Brotherhood leadership, but its second and third tier ranks and much of its rank and file to years in prison. The head of the Muslim Brotherhood, Mohammed Badia, the supreme guide, has been handed 4 death sentences, one of which still stands. The others were overturned or rejected, but he's received several life sentences. Just the other day, we saw football fans, 12 of them, be sentenced to death for a football riot in 2012. We've seen this crackdown extend beyond Islamists to target secular activists, university students, trade unionists, and people across the board to really silence any kind of opposition. And at the same time, we've seen acquittal after acquittal for members of the police and security forces, which have been accused of killing hundreds of protesters, and for former regime officials. It's hard to find one member of the Mubarak regime who is still behind bars. Mubarak himself, of course, was sentenced to life in prison, but successfully appealed that sentence and was acquitted in November of last year. Both of his sons walked out of prison in January of this year. And so we've seen critics have called this a very politicized judiciary, and they have said that rather than serving to uphold the rule of law, it's really protecting the regime and the regime's interests. And so I think that'll be viewed in this lens by many human rights workers and legal scholars.